Now, again, as a practitioner, you're busy, hopefully. Well, there's a balance. It's nice to be busy because that means you've got clients, which means you're able to make a living. So you don't want to be too bored as a practitioner, but you also don't want to be too slammed busy and stressed out about it. But it's not uncommon for you to if you get busy, you don't have time to sit and read chapters and chapters and chapters and pull out all of your different herb books that you have, compile it into a clinically relevant monograph that gets you as much depth as possible to get all the details you need to determine if it's a right remedy for your patient. No more, no less. So there's a balance with that where you want to have all the info that you need, but you don't want it too long and too difficult and time consuming to sort through to determine if it's the right remedy for you. Now, what I noticed about a lot of monographs is that they contain a lot of information that isn't always necessary or clinically relevant, right? And now I just want to be clear. I'm not saying it's not interesting information. I'm not saying it's not useful information. I'm not saying it's not good information to know about the herb, okay? I'm just saying it may not necessarily be super clinically relevant if you're trying to have basically a quick reference type tool to just quickly look up an herb, double check what's up with it. Oh wait, is that hot or cold? Wait, how's that herb taste? Or what's the dosage range, right? Quick reference. So you don't want it bogged down. Big one here would be constituent listings. I personally don't think constituent listings are that necessarily clinically relevant. Useful, but in another way. Like, I think the chemistry is useful to determine how to optimally extract the herb. And that's why if I'm doing monographs that's including this information, it's usually around the pharmacy info, because I think that's what's most important. The constituents don't necessarily make you a better practitioner. It makes you a better herbal pharmacist, right? Constituent listings, I don't think necessarily have to be there. Botany, some books have these really long descriptions of the herb, botanical descriptions, identification characteristics, morphology characteristics. I don't think that's necessary. That's very important, obviously, for a botany book, for a plant ID book, for if you're out in the bush and trying to ID a plant, obviously that's super relevant information, but in a clinical context, not relevant. I would also add there with the chemistry part, you have pharmacological mechanisms of action. So that might be the pharmacokinetics or pharmacodynamics of the herb. Not a lot of monographs contain this information because, to be perfectly honest, not a lot is known about that with herbs. Some specific constituents that is known a little bit. This can really bog down a monograph. I don't think it's that necessary clinically, unless it really pertains to contraindications and safety. When you have herbs, for example, that affect the cytochrome P450 detoxification pathways in the liver, that's going to affect metabolism of certain drugs. That's good to know, right? That's good to know that an herb has that kind of a pathway and does that. St. John's wort's a really good example of that. So keep that in mind, but you don't want to have too much of that information there as well.